Okay, we're live streaming.
Oh, okay,
Check our social.
here we go. Okay, we're back. Lance Luke and Martin Pea, part of Ask the Building Expert Masterclass series. And we got an interesting topic today. And thank you for joining us. Those are that are on our Zoom platform, as well as we're restreaming on social media. Let's see, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So we have a good number of people joining us from all over, and welcome. Our topic today is what happens after a flood, remediation versus reconstruction, know the right approach. And I got asked a question about this image with a lot of water on the road, whether it was in Hawaii or not. We're actually from Hawaii, and we're broadcasting from Honolulu, Hawaii, but the image is not uh, of a place in Hawaii. I was telling Martin if it was and it was like ocean water, you'd see seaweed and crabs and stuff like that, but that's not the case here. So this webinar is presented by Construction Management Inspection. And let me go through some slides here. And here we go. So before I get started, if there's any kind of flood, it doesn't matter whether it's a water pipe burst, or your drain line cracked, or overflowing stream, or hurricane flooding, or tsunami, or things like that. It's pretty much the same idea. And the words here, remediation, is to remediate things. So you have a dry area in the house and it gets wet. So the remediation is cleaning up, taking the water uh, out of the premises and drying it out. And if there's any other things that got damaged, then remove those, like maybe the carpet got soaked or things like that. And then that's a cleanup part. The reconstruction is actually uh, construction work, rebuilding, demolishing, and putting things in new. Now, that's only in a case of if it gets really damaged. If it's not that wet, then sometimes uh, your building components, your furniture, and things like that can be dried out. Now, this is the same concept, whether it's a flood or a fire. The remediation process and reconstruction is pretty much similar. So the goals of our presentation today help you understand the difference between remediation and reconstruction, and then provide actionable steps for addressing flood damage. Now let's talk about understanding the impact of flooding on your property, and whether you live in a single family house, or a condo, high-rise condo, or an office, apartment building. It's all pretty much the same kind of concept of remediation or understanding uh, water damage or water infiltration or flooding issues. We got to be concerned about structural integrity, which means that prolonged water exposure can lead to cracks, settling, compromised load bearing capacity. If your structure is made out of wood, like wood frame, you have a lot of drywall, um, things like that. For the most part, the event of a flood doesn't really cause too much damage on like a reinforced concrete structure, like if you live in an apartment building or a condo. Okay, but um, other factors to consider if the building's made out of wood, a lot of wood and drywall, and you have a lot of water sitting there, it can lead to mold, wood rot, and those kind of things. Also, there's material damage. Building, excuse me, building material components in your property, such as drywall, insulation, flooring, are often really damaged by water. And in some cases, it cannot be saved, even if you dry it out. So you could have, let's say, a flood, you have a wastewater line that floods your house, and you have carpet, right? You don't want to clean the carpet, no matter how clean you can get it. And also the carpet underlayment, what you do is just throw it away and clean the floor before you reinstall your new carpet. You wouldn't want to save that. And a lot of flooring, it's made of material that gets warped or expands when it's wet, then you can't save it. It starts warping and just, doesn't function and doesn't look good. There's also the cost factor, the financial burden. You want to file a claim with your insurance carrier, and hopefully you do have insurance, but the caveat is that the insurance may not always cover the full extent of the damage, the total damage. So it may leave property owners with significant out-of-pocket expenses. So it's good to talk to the insurance provider and ask about the coverage. Property value, if there's visible signs of damage, it may deter potential buyers and lower your appraisal value and even your rating. And then also, of course, there's that emotional impact, which is not, visible. Like you can see water damage, right? Homeowners often face a lot of stress, anxiety due to sudden displacement, loss of personal belongings, and things like that. A lot of people, when there's hurricanes and major flooding, um, could be tornado also, and a lot of their personal property gets wet and damaged, and you can't save it, right? Valuable, irreplaceable photos from family generations, and they're all lost. They got damaged by water. So there's a lot of different souvenirs and things like that that you can't replace. They have more value to those people. So what happens first after there's a flood event? There's an initial assessment that we're talking about. So key factors in decision making, you want to figure out what the extent of the damage is. If it's a minor leak and there's not too much water and you can kind of mop it up and all that, okay, that's a good thing, right? But if it's more than that, it becomes more problematic. So the extent of damage is the first thing. Minor damages like superficial water stains, light mold growth may only require remediation. So in not every case, the reconstruction scenario is involved. The next thing is the type of materials that are affected. Some can dry out and it's pretty much good to go, and some material, when it gets water damage, you just have to throw it away. So porous materials such as drywall, insulation are less likely to be saved. Non-porous material like concrete, ceramic tile, may be cleaned and still usable. Now there's a safety consideration. Hidden risks such as mold or structural instability may necessitate reconstruction for long-term safety, but that's for the professionals mainly to determine. Examples of damage severity. Minor damage, like stains on a ceiling tile, let's say in an office building, it doesn't look good. Um, you have, uh, and you've probably seen this, and you walk into a store and you see brown discoloration on your ceiling or ceiling tiles. Could have been from an air conditioner leak, could have been from a roof leak or a plumbing leak. So we consider this minor damage. So there's light water stains on walls and ceilings. There may be isolated mold spots in a single area. All right, so you have specific areas that you need to address. Okay, that's the minor damage. And the severe damage would be buckled floors, sagging ceilings, structural collapse, like you see photos after a hurricane or a tornado when roofs are flying off the structure. The house is maybe half there, the rest got blown away, or we don't know what happened to it, but it's not there anymore. So you have structural issues and then also extensive contamination from floodwaters carrying hazardous substances. It could be a lot of uh, damage, bacteria, mold, and other kind of things like that. Now, a flood event could also be if there was a fire, right? Let's say you live in a townhouse and you're on the second floor and there was a fire that occurred on the third floor. So when the fire department comes to put the fire out, they're using water, and water from the third floor drips down into your unit. So you have actually water damage, flood damage, but it's not caused by a natural disaster like a hurricane or tropical storm or anything like that, right? It was caused by um, having to put the fire out with using water. And there was a situation where I was called to um, be the project manager of. There was a townhouse and one unit caught on fire and five other units got affected with water damage and various other, well, most of it was water damage. The um, unit, the primary unit that caught on fire had, of course, fire damage. The other units had smoke damage, but they had more water damage due to the putting out the fire. So there's secondary damages in addition to um, the primary damage, which was the fire itself. So keep those things in mind. Now, very important, you have a professional assessment. A qualified inspector can identify hidden damage that may not be immediately visible. Professionals provide guidance to determine the most cost-effective and safe course of action. And then accurate assessments prevent unnecessary costs or future complications. Now, here's a heads up. You're going to depend on your insurance company, but what happens if your insurance company says, we're only going to cover these items and we're not covering the rest? Or when it comes to cleanup or even reconstruction, they're not covering everything that needs to be covered, right? Then what do? You're going to need to talk to maybe your attorney or maybe hire an inspector that can come in and evaluate the damage and do his own report, because in some cases the third party inspector's report is not consistent with the insurance adjuster report, and therein lies the problem where you have insurance company willing to pay X amount of dollars and you as a homeowner want everything covered. And there may be exclusions under the policy, but that has to be looked into. And sometimes it gets to be a big battle between the homeowner and their insurance company. That's why you may want to call in an inspector to come and check things out and not depend on just the insurance company and not depend solely on the remediation company because they could be wrong. As I mentioned before, causes of flood damage, you have natural disasters, hurricane, tornado, tropical storm, typhoon, whatever you want to call it, any kind of natural event that would cause water damage, right? Sometimes you have a lot of heavy wind and not too much rain, but all you need is some rain and then water gets into the house. Okay, so when you have a lot of rain, then you could have overflowing streams, rivers, and that could cause flood damage also if your house is located in a low plain area or a flood plain. Okay, and then what else? You could have plumbing failures. And when I say plumbing, that involves your uh, drinking water, plumbing piping, and it involves your wastewater. So drinking water is like you go to your sink, turn the faucet on, that's clean water. And then the wastewater is when you're doing laundry and the water, dirty water from the laundry uh, goes into your drain. And then the other type of wastewater is you flush your toilet, and then that's the wastewater line. So you could have either uh, a clean water leak or you could have a wastewater, dirty water leak. Okay? And then the other cause would be um, sort of along the natural disaster line is rising water table, and it could be either uh, fresh water or rainwater. When there's a huge storm, then um, your rivers and streams and ponds start overflowing, and that causes a rise in the water table. And then you could also have the ocean water rising, um, high tide, or high tides during a storm event, or even tsunami. Okay, so there's different ways and different factors and contributing factors to cause water damage. It could be fresh water, wastewater, seawater, any type of water. And then let's talk about types of flood damage. You have water saturation, where water's just sitting there because of prolonged exposure, and it could lead to rotting wood, weakening drywall, uh, total ruined flooring material. And guess what? If it's a slow leak or slow drip, it could actually attract termites. Ground termites like water. They have to have water to live. That's why it's ground termites, right? Because there's water in the ground, and then that's where they get their nutrition from too. Of course, from the wood. And then also contamination. Floodwaters often contain debris, sewage, chemicals, posing health risks and requiring specialized cleanup. Now, in Hawaii, when there's a major storm and you have a lot of water, there's contamination, there's silt runoff, like for instance, into Kaneohe Bay. So before the storm, the bay looked, pretty nice and clean. After the storm, you look at the bay and it's all brown. It's like really the whole bay is dirty, and that's from all the silt and stuff running off the mountain and the hill and just flowing into the stream. Another example is the Alawai Canal. The canal is, on its way to being clean, and then after a huge storm, you got all these different tributaries from these different valleys and mountains like Manoa, Palolo, so forth, all verging down ends up into the Alawai Canal. And that's why after a storm, the Alawai Canal looks so polluted. You have brown, dirty brown water, and you have like practically the whole canal on the top where the water is filled with all kind of debris, floating pieces of paper and cardboard boxes and things like that. The other thing is structural weakening. Saturated foundations, walls, support beams may lose their integrity, uh, risking collapse or long-term instability. Now, um, this a lot of times applies to coastal structures. So if you have um, a building that's built near the coast or near the ocean, and the ocean water is seeping in the ground, and then you don't know for years that your concrete footing and foundation is actually soaking up salt water, and the salt and concrete, especially the steel, the reinforcing in the steel, they don't meet, and they're not friends. So um, when you have salt water hitting a piece of rebar, that rebar is going to really corrode a lot. It's sort of like you have um, a car that you drive around and there's a scratch of the paint, and now you have bare metal exposed. All it takes is some um, salt from the seawater or acid rain or something to get on that metal, and now you start having rust and corrosion. Okay, so that's the whole idea. Steps in effective remediation. Now, let's say there's a flood event. What do you do? Okay, the first thing you do is contact your insurance company. Um, at the same time, you call a plumber or a cleanup company. There's various companies that do remediation. They're called flood remediation companies, and they also help with the mold issue and help drying things out. So step number one, assess and dry out affected areas. Conduct a thorough inspection to identify the extent of water damage. And you might not want to wait for your insurance person or the remediation company to do the assessment. You should do your own assessment and keep track, because there may be a situation you would have to argue, especially if it dries out and then that area is not included in the remediation scope. And you can say, look, when I looked at this wall or floor, there was water here, dried out now, but I think we need to include this area for remediation purposes. Okay, so you identify the areas that got damaged. What happens is the remediation company would use moisture meters and thermal imaging cameras to detect hidden water pockets or hidden areas of moisture. They would employ industrial grade dehumidifiers and air movers, sometimes called scrubbers, to dry out spaces quickly and prevent further damage. So they're going to bring in equipment to dry things out really fast. Now, they should also do what's called moisture mapping, which is make a map of the area of your house. If only the living room and one bedroom got damaged, then the moisture mapping would show those two areas. If more areas got damaged, then they should include the other areas as well. And basically, it's kind of a diagram that shows the extent of water damage, and they use that as a guideline for their cleanup. So second thing is you clean and disinfect. Use EPA-approved disinfectants to eliminate bacteria, mold, and other pathogens. So there's if regular clean water is sitting for several hours, eventually bacteria is going to start growing. And although it's clean water, there still could be problems. And then you want to also ensure proper ventilation to aid in the cleaning process and prevent harmful fumes if they're using products that you shouldn't be breathing in all the time. Preventing mold and mildew growth. So you want to treat surfaces with antimicrobial agents to inhibit mold growth. Now, if it's only surface mold, um, and it's really light, then it's not too bad. But if it's bad, then I would not clean it. I would just remove those pieces of drywall, or if it's wood or whatever. It depends on, what the inspector's going to say. Monitor humidity levels and maintain consistent airflow during and after remediation, and then restoring functional integrity. So depends on the level that the water got. And also, I mean, if it's a flood and the water didn't get past the level of where your floor outlets are or electrical outlets, okay, you should have it checked out. Or maybe it was a flood that came from the unit above or next door, and it damaged your light fixtures, or you see water dripping from your light fixtures, or um, water pouring out of your electrical outlet. Well, that's a red flag. So you want to make sure your electrical's inspected and tested, your plumbing is inspected and tested, finalize with cosmetic restoration, like painting, refinishing to restore the property to its original condition. Now, if you have like minor cleanup, cosmetic, touch-up painting and all that, okay, that's not too bad. But if it's really bad, then you talk about demolition. So if it's to the point where you really need to remove rather than clean, that's where the reconstruction phase comes in. When the remediation isn't enough, or it just can't be done. For instance, we talk about extensive structural damage, collapsed walls, severely compromised foundations, or sagging ceilings. Well, that's a given. You need reconstruction. Hazardous contamination, the floodwaters containing sewage, chemicals, or other toxic substances. You don't want to just clean, so you want to remove and replace. And then also there's materials that you cannot clean to make it good. Sometimes drywall gets so water damaged that you can't clean it and dry it out. The insulation, once it gets wet, it's damaged already. And some types of flooring, you like I mentioned before, you can't save it. And then also, if you have repeated flood incidences, chronic flooding requiring significant upgrades to prevent uh, recurrence. So if it happens like more than once, then you got to think about what the next step is. Now, keep in mind that dependent on the age of the house, right, your home, regardless if it's an apartment building, a condo, um, or a townhouse, or even like a office building or any kind of building that sustains water damage. If the building was built before 1977, 1978, there's a chance that there could be asbestos in the drywall mud, the plaster. Maybe if the building is really old, there could be asbestos in the drywall, asbestos in the floor tile, right? Ceiling tile. There could be even lead paint. So sometimes you just don't go in and clean. If the asbestos got wet and now it's considered friable, which means that it could be released, the fibers could be released in the air, right? Then you can't clean that. You have to remove it. So sometimes the remediation and reconstruction costs ends up in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, depends on the extent of the damage. So it's not like we'll just go there, wipe the walls down, and repaint it. So that may not be the case. So here's some overview of the reconstruction steps. If there's any structure repairs, um, we would reinforce and rebuild damaged walls, floors, foundations, utility system overhaul. We're talking about electrical, plumbing, in your air conditioning, your ventilation. If it's water damage and it can't be cleaned and dried out and it needs to be replaced, then that's a replacement. such as if your electrical components are sitting in water, even if it gets dried out, right? The metal still may be corroding in the future, and you can't see it because it's hidden in the walls. Material replacement, install new drywall insulation, flooring, and finishes as needed. Use flood-resistant materials where possible. Okay. And then the final restorations would address cosmetic elements like painting, cabinetry, interior design, all your hardware, things like that, if it's not being reused. Okay, now, for the most part, in general, I'm talking about a reconstruction of an average building, and it's not a historic building. If it's a historic building on the state or national historic registry, you cannot just cut walls out and replace windows and all that. You have to follow the protocol using a historic preservation guideline. So that's a whole different animal there. Cost considerations comparing remediation and reconstruction. So remediation, it's a lower initial cost, focusing on drying, cleaning, and minor repairs. Typical range 3,000 to 8,000, depending on the extent of water damage. And these figures are on the low side. I've seen remediation that costs over 150,000. So just giving you kind of an idea. And then reconstruction, higher cost due to structural repairs, material replacement, and rebuilding. Typical range 10,000 to 100,000 or more, depending on the severity of damage and property size. To tell you the truth, I haven't been on a job site where the reconstruction cost was $10,000. That's on the low side. I've been a number of situations where it was about 150 up to $500,000 for reconstruction, depending on the extent of the damage and what needs to be fixed. Property value impact, remediation, cost effective for minor damages, preserving existing property value. Inadequate remediation can lead to lingering issues such as mold hidden in the wall that they cleaned the wall rather than removed it. Negative impacts on resale value or appraisal value. A reconstruction, you're going to increase property value because basically the upgrades are newer and hopefully made with flood-resistant materials. And then also the reconstruction enhances long-term durability and buyer confidence. So if you have like a house that was built in 1950 and there was a flood and they had to redo the living room and bedroom, basically the living room and bedroom are pretty much new at that point, right? So there's more value. Insurance considerations. Insurance companies, they only want to pay the least amount as possible, right? So the remediation often covered under standard policies if the damage is sudden and accidental, such as a burst pipe, right? But if it's determined that the leak's been going on for months and months and months, right? The insurance company is going to say, this isn't a sudden event. It's been going on a long time, so we're not covering that, right? So be careful. Then the reconstruction coverage typically depends on the type of policy, standard versus flood insurance. If you're a condo, it's a HO6, and then you figure on if the master policy would step in after the deductible. It could be 25, it could be $50,000. And then may require additional riders for full reconstruction coverage. So it's best to check your own insurance policy for the coverage. Preventative measures to mitigate future flood damage, waterproofing, landscaping for flood defense, good drainage systems that work, and make sure it's inspected and cleaned out, routine checks of things, right, around the house, proactive repairs, professional assessments, Proactive repairs is like if you see a like slight leak, like your sink is dripping or something, and it's like very slow, you can think to yourself, well, this is minor. I don't have to do anything about it. But a small leak could turn into a burst pipe that could lead to, thousands and thousands of damage, and not only repair damage, the aggravation of having contractors come in your house and start demolishing things and fixing things up. So that's the end of the presentation. Before we get to the Q&A, we provide these masterclass expert webinars. Probably we're going at 2 a month, and we've done so many on almost every single subject you can think of: roofing, waterproofing, painting, concrete spalling, and so forth. And it's available on our website. We have every presentation recorded for you to watch. And then we have upcoming presentations. We're going to be talking about expert witness work. And the next one, I believe, is construction workmanship. What constitutes good workmanship versus compliance with building code? That's going to be interesting. I'm excited to talk about that subject. And then here's our website. It's askbuildingexpert.now.site. And that is a huge website that we have to spend money, extra money, paying for storage because we have so much information. It requires additional storage, online storage. So we have expert websites that you can go to. We have like a separate website for each subject: painting, fire, life safety, contractor licensing, and a whole bunch. And then we have our national blogs where people read and get the information, and we get a lot of thank you emails and things like that for providing free information to help people. And then, like I mentioned, our webinars, we have that also listed. We have a bunch of books. To date, I think it's about like 65 books that I wrote on different subjects. So it's available. If you go to our different websites now, you can get it for free, but we're converting it to paid. You would have to go to Amazon to order it. So try to find which one you want. Then we have another special website, constructionexperts.now.site, that we put up for you. And now this is the question and answer time. So hopefully you got some valuable information. And I'm going to turn it over to Martin, see if we got any questions or comments from anybody. So Martin.
Yes, Lance, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, you ready for the questions? Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic considering our recent brush with tsunamis. So it's a good one to prep people on things they should be looking out for if we get hit with the ones that are, I guess, taller than the 4 or 5 feet that came in this last tsunami. So good topic, appropriate
Yeah.
topic.
Okay.
So here's the first questions. We didn't have too many actually coming in on the social side. But the first one here is, what are the first steps I should take to begin the recovery process after a flood, or I guess any kind of flood damage, yeah, or water damage?
Okay. So the first thing would be to make sure, like if it's a pipe leak, right, plumbing leak, that the leak is turned off, or that's one of the first things. And then document, contact your insurance company if it's really bad. When I say document, you want to write things down and take pictures or video, right? Because you don't know when the insurance adjuster is going to come, and some of the areas may be like dried out by then. Also, there may be a situation where the insurance adjuster is going to say, um, this area is not too bad, this other area is bad, and you might have to argue with them. So that's the number one step. So you do the same thing on an emergency situation, emergency scenario. You stop the problem and as much as you can, and then you go, to the next step, start cleaning things up at the same time, contact your insurance company. Now, that's in the event of a pipe flood. If it's a flood due to a hurricane or rising tide or something like that, it's hard to, you can't stop it, right? So you just have to do your best by documenting things and contacting people. There's information on the internet about what things you should do. And the professionals always say to document everything on your own also. Don't just wait for somebody to come and do that for you, because there's a chance they may miss something. And then if they miss something, then your insurance is not going to cover it, right? If you have coverage. So yeah, that's the number one thing to do. Of course, it's common sense, but sometimes when things happen, people get flustered and they kind of, really don't know what to do. I've been in situations where I was trying to follow up and help get more insurance coverage, and I asked the homeowner, "Oh, do you have any video of photos showing, the water and all that?" They go, "Oh, I was so flustered, I didn't even think about doing that." Right? They only thought about making calls and telling people, what was going on and they needed help. So just a heads up for you.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Yeah,
Sure.
always good to document, and nowadays video is probably one of the better. Videos and photos can really capture everything. So great answer. Okay, the next question is from somebody, I guess, who's maybe uh, been in flooding situation. And the question is, how can I ensure my home is safe to live in after the flooding? Yeah.
You talk with the remediation or reconstruction company and you make your own list, and don't be scared to ask questions. Because sometimes when you're dealing with contractors, people tend to get intimidated and they don't want to ask questions, or they don't want to sound dumb, or you know sound too demanding or whatever. But guess what? You're actually paying for these companies to do work for you, regardless. You may be paying indirectly because your insurance company would be paying them, right? But nonetheless, um, make sure you get all the answers to your question and bring it up. And it could be a situation where, well, how come you're not cleaning this part? Oh, because it's not damaged. Yeah, but I saw water going into this area. Can you check it? So don't think that the insurance company is going to come in and be the saving grace, and don't think that the contractor is going to come in and do everything, because the contractor needs to get approval from the insurance company. So if the insurance company is saying no, the contractor is not going to do anything, because they're going to say, well, how do I know I'm going to get paid? So I'm not going to do anything until I get approval for the insurance company. I had a situation where it took like a month to get approval from the insurance company. And in the meantime, walls are sitting there that need to be dried out, and the situation got worse, and this was because of a drain pipe leak. So just, it's not all 1 through 10 and everything's good and you get your house back. So there's situations where people are fighting their insurance company, people are fighting with the remediation company and reconstruction company. So it's not, I mean, if you heard stories about contractors messing up, um, this is one of the areas that could be in a similar situation. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, very good. Yeah. I'll always ask. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, let's see. This is the last one I've found here so far today, and the question is, what practical tips do you recommend for protecting a home from future floods?
Well, as you know, natural disasters, there's nothing you can do. Well, there is something you can do. You can pray. Um, but when it's natural disasters, you can't prevent that. You can't prevent a tsunami or hurricane or a rising tide or a huge tropical storm, heavy winds. I mean, that's beyond, our control. But with respect to your own house, you can make sure that your plumbing is intact. Any kind of water sources are inspected and, check for, any potential leaks or things like that. Maybe your piping is old because your house is old, right? So if you have it checked and the inspector or contractor says, "Oh, you know what, your pipes are old, man. It's gonna go anytime." Well, that would be a red flag to take steps to try and, replace your piping, right? Or something's not working correctly, you want to get it fixed. So the idea is preventive maintenance goes a long way rather than wait for something to fail. Because when it comes to uh, a leaking pipe, burst pipe, cracked pipe, or something, if you wait too long, it could be a disaster. So in those situations, you wanna go in and take care of it as soon as you can. Use the best practice, best course of action, and that's what's happening. And if you live in your own house, you have more control over um, all the building components in your house. If you live in a condo, you have some control of components within your jurisdiction, within your unit, but if it's a common area piping, it's your association that would have jurisdiction over that. So um, you have less control in that respect. So in those situations, but you could still talk to the board and ask the board, when was the last time we inspected? I think we need to have an inspection. Or the other thing was give a scenario, hypothetical situation. Oh, okay, so let's say a pipe bursts above me or next to me, and I live in a high-rise condo, and it causes damage to my unit. Who's going to pay for the damage? Is it the homeowner above me, his insurance company? Is it the condo master insurance company? Do I have to file a claim with my own insurance company? So it's good to know these things ahead of time. Although hopefully you never need to get into that situation. You just need to be knowledgeable enough to determine what steps to take when there's a event, when there's an occurrence. So basically, just be proactive as you can, and understand that there's a difference between remediation, which is a cleanup, and then a repair or replacement, which is the reconstruction aspect of it. Hopefully, if there is a flood event, then all you need is remediation. You don't need the reconstruction, right? Because it's two different animals. Once you get into reconstruction, it's phase two, and it becomes more of a headache, more problematic, more people coming to your place and disturbing you. You don't have a life when that happens. If it takes 2 to 3 months to reconstruct, you basically turning over your house to the contractor, and hopefully they do it fast and proper so that you don't waste any more time. So that's just the situation of things. Hopefully you don't need to get into the situation, but even if you don't, it's good to understand what's happening. And because the housing is getting old and things need to be fixed, there's more and more claims now. So these companies that do remediation are busy, and that's why all of them offer 24/7 services. Now, when when does a pipe break when you require emergency plumbing? It usually breaks like on the weekend at like 2 a.m. when everybody's sleeping, right? So that's why these companies offer the 24/7 because they know things happen at odd times, right? It just doesn't happen at 9 a.m. on a Monday morning. You pick up the phone and you can get a contractor, you know. So anyway, Martin, you got any other comments or questions from anybody?
No, that's all I've seen on social, and then didn't see any from our Zoom viewers today. But it's good. It's good risk management information when it comes to flooding from all sides. There's so
Yeah.
much things to consider. Yeah.
Okay, and then the information that I presented not only applies in Hawaii or in the United States, it also applies anywhere in the world. And I know um, our presentations, people tune in from different countries, and we like that um, because the procedure is the same, right? There's a water damage and it needs to be remediated, and if it's bad, then you need reconstruction. So it's basically the same. So the takeaway is that you don't have to worry about, oh, that only applies in the United States. It doesn't apply, where we live. No, it applies same like in Japan, Asia countries. It's pretty much the same thing. Now, the protocol may be a little different in what they do, but um, and let me add this. When I talk about remediation and reconstruction, there's a lot of companies that do both. So you can hire one contractor, like XYZ contractor, that will do both the remediation and the reconstruction. And the remediation, you want to use contractors that have equipment and access and certified to do like mold testing, asbestos testing, lead paint, and things like that. Because if not, they're going to have to hire out um, a third party. And if you don't use, and you don't have to use the same company, you could use one company for remediation and use a different company for reconstruction. But I found that um, in my course of doing business with remediation reconstruction properties, it's easier to work with one contractor that can do both because then you have the same company to deal with. And I've seen situations where they have two different companies and the contractor that needs to fix it up doesn't communicate with the contractor that did the remediation, and they didn't know that um, one wall was just cleaned and it was still good. And so the reconstruction guys just demoed that wall, which didn't need to, right? So there was an issue regarding who was going to pay for that because it wasn't needed. And even if you have the insurance involved and the company, you should still inspect the work and monitor the work, right? And I've been hired in some cases as a third party consultant to as a go between the owner, right? The owner, the homeowner, and the reconstruction company, remediation company, and even the insurance company when there was an argument to help settle. And it was a difference of over $100,000 where the insurance company wasn't going to pay, and therefore the reconstruction company wasn't going to do the work. So unfortunately, the homeowner had to hire an attorney and then me to kind of push the issue to get things resolved. But um, it's hard when your place is in shambles and you can't live there because there's no movement, there's no decision on getting approval to do the work. So the unit was sitting for months and months. So that's just a sideline story just to let you know that it it's happened sometimes. So anyway, I see that we're almost out of time, so I want to thank you guys on behalf of House of Building Expert, Martin Pea, Lance Luke, for joining us, and hopefully you can join us on the next webinar. And the next topic of the next presentation I've never done before, and it's about construction workmanship issues. And that's been, I think, out of the majority of calls I get to my office regarding construction issues, that's the number one. Workmanship and warranty items. And the other issues would be the contractor didn't finish on time, or they left the place in a mess, or whatever. But the number one, and I don't know why I didn't talk about this earlier in a presentation, but people need to understand there's a difference between good workmanship versus poor workmanship, and good workmanship versus what's acceptable to the building code. And that's what I'm going to talk about, because there's a lot of factors involved. There's like, I'll give you a scenario. One condition could be compliant with the building code, but it could be bad or poor workmanship. So if the contractor says, oh, I followed the building code, okay, that's fine, but is it actually constructed properly? Right? It may be constructed, but is it properly? Right? If it's poor or mediocre workmanship, what does that mean? That means that it's not considered good workmanship. And what is good workmanship anyway? Right? If I ask people, can you tell me what good workmanship means? No, the contractor followed the plans, or the contractor built it to code. No, that necessarily doesn't mean good workmanship, right? So I'm excited to talk about that, because that's basically the basis when I testify or I work on cases as an expert witness regarding construction defects or construction issues regarding workmanship. That's the whole topic right there, right? And I have to prove that this isn't good workmanship. This is subpar, right? So I'm going to give you the details on that and talk about those things so you can understand for yourself that there's a difference. And there's been situations where the homeowner just paid the contractor because the contractor said, yeah, we did everything, we followed the plans, and everything's good, right? And they get paid. And later on, I get a call from the homeowner, I wasn't happy about the paint job. And the contractor said, no, I followed the plans and the building code and everything's good, so I need to get paid. And then when I go actually inspect, I go, you shouldn't have paid the contractor. This is bad. Right? They missed spots, they painted over areas that shouldn't have been painted, and I said, oh, the homeowner said, well, I didn't really know what to do. The contractor told me that everything was good and this is standard practice, right? Like, everybody makes mistakes. Yeah, I understand that, but you're paying big money. People are paying, $650,000 to over $1 million to build a new house or some improvement. They expect to have good work, right? All the way from framing, concrete, to touch-up painting and finish work and all that. So that's what we stand for, right? And we're here to level the playing field. So contractors tell you this, well, we don't know if it's true or not. Most of the time, the contractors just say anything so they can get paid. And I have a lot of contractor friends, right? And I don't want to talk bad about contractors, but in general, I'm just saying that's been my experience. So I know run out of time. So once again, appreciate you guys attending and hope to see you at the next presentation. Aloha, mahalo.